Just moving here you to the stage so that my colleague can test sound. Can you hear us, Océane? So Océane cannot hear us, but we were not talking. So now we are talking and we are just waiting. And people are confirming online that the sound is very good. So just waiting for our panelists to hear us to then be able to, but we can hear her. Océane, can you hear us now? I see you are unmuted.
Okay, hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excuse me. Hello, everyone.
So we are now going to launch this event as you are well connected. So 2 seconds here. Hello, colleagues, welcome. Just here, move it back. So we are now officially launching this event, and I'm looking at the colleagues. Excellencies, dear colleagues, good morning to who is with us at the International Environment House, and welcome to who is with us on WebEx or is now watching the video of this event. We have the pleasure to welcome you today for a new chemicals and waste negotiations briefing organized within the framework of the Geneva Environment Network, which will provide an overview of the work and key activities to advance the sound management of chemicals and waste globally, including on the adoption of the global framework on chemicals less than a year ago in Bonn, complementing the global deals that set agreed goals and targets to tackle the triple planetary crisis that humanity is currently facing of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. We are indeed also joined today by the new head of the Secretariat of this new framework for her first briefing to International Geneva in her new functions. Jacqueline Alvarez, the chief of the United Nations Environment Programme Chemicals and Health branch, will be chairing this session. And to open this event, she is joined by David Ogden, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions. And as I mentioned, they will be opening this event. Monika Stankiewicz, who is the head of the Minamata Convention Secretariat, is traveling today. This is why she is not joining us. And to welcome you to this event, Océane Dayer, who is Switzerland Waste and Chemicals Focal Point, and also host of some of the important negotiations we will be discussing today, will provide some opening remarks. Before we give her the floor, let me remind you that the documents presented, the summary, as well as the video of the event will be made available on the webpage of this event. The link is being shared in the chat for who is online and available on the screen for who is with us here in the room. And throughout the event, those of you who are online can raise their questions in the Q&A box, and we will use these questions to feed the discussion after the presentations. So, Ms. Dayer, you have the floor, and just Ms. Alvarez, you will chair this session after the remarks of Ms. Dayer. So, Ms. Dayer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Sorry for the little technical problem. It's my pleasure to open this chemicals and waste negotiation briefing. which has become a pillar of the international chemicals and waste nexus. And thank you very much to the Geneva Environmental Networks and to all speakers from MEAs and Global Initiative for making this presentation.
We lost you a few seconds, but you're back.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
I'm sorry. Hope it will get better. So as thanking the Geneva Environment Networks and all the speakers from MEAs and global initiatives for making this precious information possible. Indeed, 2023 was a very busy year for chemicals and waste negotiation, culminating with the adoption in September of the Global Framework on Chemicals. This new voluntary framework, as a successor to SAICM, will play a decisive role for the sound management of chemicals and waste globally. But the year we're now in, 2024, is no different, with very important milestones around the establishment of a science policy panel on chemicals no later than next week in Geneva, but also the new legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. We also face important preparation for the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm COP, as well as for the Minamata COP that will all happen next year in 2025. And those preparation they are taking right now, those discussions, those exchanges in order to have successful COP will happen as well this year. I would say that the international chemicals and waste governance is a fabulous toolbox. Some instruments are being forged, some are getting operationalized right now, and others have been the first stones to be laid. But all play a crucial role to build a home where chemicals and waste are managed soundly. So I would invite us all to take care of our toolbox and continue to oil it regularly as we do. And those kind of briefing are really important for us to all have the information, the knowledge, and the expertise sharing to take care of this toolbox. So I'm looking forward to an informative and constructive exchanges, and thank you all for participating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ocean, for your words. And I have to say, you stole my words. I was going to mention how 2023 was huge on international meetings related to the chemicals, waste and pollution agenda. You just said that, similar to this year. So I needed to change my opening. And what I will say is that when I remember that when I was a teenager, those things and exercise that people ask you to do to really construct, the team building aspects was, what do you want to be when you are older? And I said, well, or what do you want for your life? And I remember saying, well, I can tell you what I don't want for my life. I don't want to have a routinary life, getting up, going to work, doing that. I don't know if now I regret that, but in any case, what I have to say that this is a very exciting agenda. I will not take time to say more things, because we know that we have to get out of the hibernation modality that we have been in this agenda for many years, and despite the successes, we still have a lot to work on. So I will pass the floor to David for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jacqueline. And certainly it is not a routine life that we lead, and seems like every day is different and every day is equally busy or more so. So with that, it's my pleasure to join Ocean and Jacqueline in welcoming you all, both in the room and online, to this important chemicals and waste negotiations briefing. Your presence today underscores the significance of collective efforts in addressing pressing issues related to the management of chemicals and waste. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Geneva Environment Network to Diana especially for organizing this event and for their continued steadfast support in bringing chemicals and waste issues to the forefront of the environmental agenda. As has become the norm for all of us in the chemicals and waste cluster, the BRS Secretariat has a full calendar of meetings scheduled for 2024 and 2025, and this June is a particularly busy month. Later in the month, we'll see the intersection of the third session of the open-ended working group on the science policy panel. That will be at the same on the outsides of it. Will be the BRS will host a number of meetings, including the 16th meeting of the Basel Convention Implementation and Compliance Committee and the 14th meeting of the open-ended working group of the Basel Convention, which we will cover in today's briefing. This is also the month we will host an annual meeting of the directors of the Basel and Stockholm Convention regional centers and the Basel Convention Conference of the Parties Bureau meeting during this period. So looking forward to September, we will have annual meetings of both the Chemicals Review Committee under the Rotterdam Convention and the POPs Review Committee under the Stockholm Convention, which are the key meetings for actually proposing adding chemicals to those conventions. We'll also have a resume meeting of the Rotterdam Convention Compliance Committee. These are the main subsidiary bodies under the BRS conventions. They are, of course, a myriad of other intersessional processes that are ongoing, which will not only feed into the subsidiary body meetings, but most importantly, into the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties of the BRS conventions, which will take place from 28 April to 9 May 2025. Later, you will hear from Juliet Kohler, who is the BRS Senior Legal Advisor Officer and officer in charge of the governance branch, who will update you on the key aspects of these meetings and provide an overview of important dates leading to the 2025 COPs. Following Juliet, Susan Wingfield, our coordinator for the 14th meeting of the open-ended working group of the Basel Convention, will provide an overview of the work of that meeting and on how the outcomes will feed into next year's Basel COP. I'd like to offer my profound thanks to the donors of the upcoming meetings. These are the European Union and the governments of France, Finland, Germany, Japan, Norway, and Switzerland. Their generous support for the travel of participants to these meetings has ensured that we have upwards of 120 developing country delegates and other parties with economies in transition, which will be receiving support to attend these meetings. This inclusivity is vital for the success of our deliberations and the effective implementation of the conventions. In conclusion, we look forward to our active engagement in today's discussions. These opportunities to meet with representatives of the permanent missions here in Geneva not only keep us informed of the busy calendar, but particularly as it relates to chemicals and waste, but also the broader context within which our work continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And yes, I don't know, we can compete on the busy agendas that we have. That's good to hear. I have at my left-hand side a person that has joined us maybe 3 weeks ago. And this is the first time that she will be sitting in this side of the table. Kay Williams is now heading the Global Framework on Chemicals Secretariat, and she will talk and update you on different areas of where we are. Over to you.
And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. I'm delighted to be here at last, and I'd like to thank UNEP colleagues for the extremely warm welcome that I've received over the last few weeks. I'm just going to try to get this to work. There you go. I think I went a bit too fast. So I will be talking about the Global Framework on Chemicals. A number of you will know that this has been this framework was in negotiation for a number of years. It was slightly affected by COVID, but in fact, last year in September, we were able to reach agreement on 3 aspects of the framework. First, a framework text that allows and will hopefully mobilize different actors for the safe and sustainable management of chemicals globally. That was the actual framework itself. We also had a political declaration called the Bonn Declaration. I think that was also a very important part of the negotiations, so that we can raise the profile of pollution, so that it's as visible, if you like, as biodiversity and climate change. And the third very important pillar was the creation of a chemicals fund, in which the German government very kindly put a substantial donation, and which we are currently trying to put into operation. So overall, in terms of the framework, we have 5 strategic objectives. We have 28 targets that we have to achieve. And the beauty of this framework, that whilst it's voluntary, that means we are multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral. And that is really the strength of the framework moving forward, because we can mobilize many different actors. In terms of next steps, so the other actors we had this political input, which was very important, but we're also working very closely with many international organizations, including the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the International Labour Organization. These are really important in being able to implement the framework moving forward. Of course, all these organizations have their own governing bodies and with their respective mandates, but we're really keen, I think they're very engaged, we're really keen that they play a central role moving forward in our work. In terms of the vision, so our vision for the framework is a planet free of harm from chemicals and waste to create this safe, healthy and sustainable future. We have a very broad scope, as chemicals are everywhere. They're essential to 21st century living, and we need to be managing them so that we can reduce any exposures to those that are adverse to our health or the environment. In terms of our strategic objectives, our primary one will be looking and strengthening the legal frameworks, the institutional mechanisms and capacities. I think the unique position we're in, being multi-stakeholder, is that maybe we need to look at the legal frameworks that are not only sitting in the ministries of environment, but those that help to transform businesses so that we create sustainable and safer chemicals in the first place, as well as try to encourage incentives for innovation and to mobilize greater transparency in the private sector. Data and information is absolutely key, and I think there are opportunities here in this objective to be able to see how we can again make data more transparent. How can we use new technologies such as artificial intelligence to be able to mine data more effectively and also enhance decision making on the data that we have. For issues of concern, I'm very interested personally in the negotiations for the Science Policy Panel to see how we can interface with them to be able to help identify, prioritize and eventually address some of those things that everybody is worried about globally and that need global solutions. The fourth objective is about making sure we have safer alternatives and sustainable solutions across the value chain. And I think this is a stronger emphasis about how we need to work with different types of stakeholders, moving still with the chemical industry, but also moving down the supply chain to work with retailers and others that are involved in using chemicals in products in particular. And then finally, I think the last objective is really about how we enhance implementation. We need to be looking at how we can ensure greater responsibility of those actors that are putting chemicals and using some of these chemicals on the market, but also how we can deliver through partnerships, cooperation, and capacity building. Just to touch a little bit then on, I said we had 28 targets. I'm not going to go through all the targets. Some are very specific, some are a little bit more generic. We do have this very target related to legislation, so target A1, very, very important. I think there will be a lot of emphasis on making sure that we do realise this target by 2030, which isn't far away. We then have a group of targets, the B targets, which are all about data. And the data not only includes data that's provided by industry, but it's also about biomonitoring data. And this is a new area in terms of health that I think will be very important moving forward. We have a suite of D targets that are addressing companies and the private sector. And this is where we're using different routes to try and make sure that we can influence and increase the responsibility of the private sector and what they're doing, but also allowing investors, insurers, bankers to be able to have the information that they need to be making sustainable choices. And then there are a suite of E targets, which are talking about mainstreaming of the safe and sustainable management of chemicals, looking about how we deal with financing, identifying some of those gaps and focusing on capacity building. But again, making sure that we look at the costs that are incurred through the poor management, if you like, of chemicals and waste through the life cycle, and being slightly more innovative and creative and looking towards our colleagues in other areas about how to achieve that. And so finally, the last target that I wanted to touch on is about the importance of working with health and labour colleagues and policies, but also looking at our climate change solutions, biodiversity, and making sure that we strengthen those synergies. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kay. We have a lot to do, for sure. So passing now the floor to Juliette from the BRS Conventions, Secretariat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and hello everyone here in the room and online. I'll be providing you an update on the work of the BRS Conventions. Thank you so much. So starting from where we come from, the 2023 meetings of the Conference of the Parties, which took place, sorry, I'm playing around with this, in May last year. So it was the 16th meeting of the Basel Convention COP, 11th meeting of the Rotterdam COP, and 11th meeting of the Stockholm COP. 52 decisions were adopted. And this included 8 joint decisions. The meeting reports are available online. We had a range of follow-up calls for information, and currently there are 2 outstanding ones, which I will bring to your attention. The first one is a call for information on technical assistance needs. The deadline was the end of May, but we're still happy to receive submissions from parties on their technical assistance needs. And the other one that's open is under the Rotterdam Convention. It's a call for information on enhancing the effectiveness of the Rotterdam Convention. And this information is welcome until the end of June. Since May 2023, we've dived, of course, full steam into the intersessional work mandated by the COPs. This includes, of course, supporting a range of bodies under the conventions, whether they're standing subsidiary bodies or ad hoc subsidiary body meetings, SIWGs, expert working groups. There's really a handful of those. And we're starting also to prepare reports and other documents that would feed into the next COPs in 2025. We've also of course, followed up on our mandates to deliver on international cooperation activities, for instance, through participation in UNEA, the negotiations on the INC on plastic pollution, the SPP, Minamata Convention, Montreal Protocol, just to name a few. Also delivering on our technical assistance mandates and supporting the work of the partnerships, which are also some platforms under the Basel Convention to bring together also non-state actors. I'll say a word now about the work of the standing subsidiary bodies under the Convention, starting with the Basel Convention and more specifically the Implementation and Compliance Committee, bearing in mind that my colleague Susan Wingfield will then give you more detailed brief on the forthcoming 14th meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group. So the ICC, as it is called, assists parties to comply with their obligations under the Convention. It facilitates, promotes, monitors, and aims to secure implementation and compliance. The 16th meeting of the committee is just around the corner. It will start on the 23rd, 24th of June with dialogues with a range of actors, regional centers, but also representative of the UN system. And then the second part of the meeting will be 29th of June to the 2nd of July. The committee, in addition to the dialogues, will consider 13 specific submissions concerning individual parties and then review a range of general issues of compliance and implementation, to name a few: classification of compliance performance with national reporting, scoping the extent of illegal traffic, reviewing the legislative implementation of the convention, guidance on how to integrate implementation needs in cooperation frameworks, and also the enhanced cooperation with the other compliance committee under the three conventions, which is that of the Rotterdam Convention. Turning now to the Rotterdam Convention, a few words about the Chemical Review Committee. It is to review chemicals and pesticide formulations according to criteria, and its mandate is to make recommendations to the COP for possible listing in Annex 3 to the Convention. The 20th meeting will be held in September in Rome. Among others, the CRC is expected to finalize the draft decision guidance documents on two chemicals, chlorpyrifos and mercury. And these two chemicals would then be considered for listing by COP12, along with 8 other returning chemicals. CRC is also to review notifications of final regulatory actions for 19 chemicals and 4 proposals for SHPFs. Also under the Rotterdam Convention, the other standing subsidiary body is the Compliance Committee, which has a mandate similar to the Basel one to assist individual parties in resolving their compliance difficulties and also to review general or systemic issues of compliance. The second meeting of the committee took place in March in Rome. The committee adopted 8 decisions, one on specific submission and the others on systemic issues of general compliance, and the meeting report is available online. The Secretariat, on behalf of the committee, will be reaching out to parties shortly with some calls for information. And as I speak, there are some webinars taking place to present the outcomes of the meeting. The second one will be on the 13th of June. The meeting was suspended on the 21st of March and will resume this fall to continue the work of the committee and prepare additional recommendations for consideration by the COP. And finally, turning to the Stockholm Convention, so a word about the Persistent Organic Pollutants Review Committee, or POPROC. The POPROC reviews chemicals proposed for listing in Annexes A, B, or C to the Convention, and it also carries out other tasks as mandated by the COP. POPROC 20, so the 20th meeting of the committee, will be held in September in Rome, back-to-back with CRC 20. POPROC will look at specifying the chemical identity of long-chain perfluorocarboxylic acids, their salts and related compounds, and medium-chain chlorinated paraffins, and further strengthening the recommendations for their listing in Annex A, meaning for elimination, with specific exemptions. The POPROC will also review the draft risk management evaluation for chlorpyrifos, and it will also consider a proposal to list polyhalogenated dibenzo-P-dioxines and dibenzofurans in Annex C. POPROC will discuss activities undertaken on POPs in stockpiles, products, and articles in use and in waste. And finally, POPROC will review progress made by parties towards eliminating brominated diphenyl ethers. All this will lead in to the preparations for the 2025 COPs, which will take place in April 2025, as mentioned by David, 28th of April to the 9th of May. There will be, of course, preparatory meetings the day before, 27th of April. And it will be, because it's every 4 years we have a high-level segment, so this time will be again the turn for a high-level segment during the COPs. The tentative schedule of work and the arrangements for the high-level segment will be finalized by the Joint Bureau meeting in November 2024. The invitation letters, including for the high-level segment, are expected to be sent out in November 2024 with a deadline for nominations mid-January 2025. We are planning to organize a global chairs training in February 2025 and we will, as usual, and subject to the availability of resources, organize the regional preparatory meetings for 4 regions and briefing online in March, April 2025. And the last 2 slides are just a list of the main meetings ahead of us between now and the 2025 COPs. I've highlighted in green those that are really around the corner, starting in very shortly, mid-June, 23rd of June. So I won't go through them, but you have them there all listed. We, of course, continuously update the list, especially when the dates are only tentative and they're made available in our joint calendar. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Juliette, for walking us through the different agenda items and meetings that are taking place very soon, and not that soon, but next year. So now I'm looking at Susan. There she is. Susan Wilfield, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, and good morning to everyone. So Juliette has just given an overview of what we have to look forward to over the next biennium in terms of broader BRS meetings, and I'm going to delve into specifically the 14th meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group to the Basel Convention. Oh, I've jumped ahead to, oh no, I haven't jumped ahead. So basically this is a chance for a midpoint review essentially between our COPs. The last one, which was held last year, as just outlined by Juliette, and then we're looking forward to the COPs in 2025, which will be in April and May. This is actually the 3rd year we'll be having an open-ended working group. Due to COVID, the scheduling was made sure that we would be able to enjoy 3 straight years of this meeting. But this year we will revert to the usual format, which is a 4-day meeting. First of all, sincere thanks to the donors who have made it possible for, as David mentioned, we've got upward of 120 delegates that are funded to attend the meetings. Our donors including Finland, France, Germany, Japan, Norway, and Switzerland. So thank you very much to them. We currently have 369 delegates registered from 130 parties and 52 observer entities, but we're seeing this number grow every day as many of the non-funded delegates submit their registrations. So it's a busy time in June. We have this meeting back to back with, of course, the Science Policy Panel, the Open-Ended Working Group, which is next week. But we also, as mentioned by David, have the Basel Convention, Stockholm Convention Regional Centres Directors Meeting after that, followed by the Implementation and Compliance Committee held in 2 parts, and of course, the Basel Bureau meeting. So just to give an overview of what the scheduling will look like, OEWG takes place in 2 weeks. It's from Tuesday to Friday. So we'll have the opportunity to have a selection of pre-meetings on Monday the 24th. This date we will have the Bureau meeting and then the regional meetings as outlined on this slide. And just to mention that the co-chairs of the meeting are Miss Judith Torres from Uruguay and Miss Lendita Dika, from North Macedonia. Please don't be alarmed. I'm not going to go through everything on this slide. This is just to give a sense of what the schedule looks like. So as I mentioned, we have a 4-day meeting. What will happen is we will have the first day and a half of the meeting in plenary session, during which the items that we anticipate further discussion in a contact group setting will be introduced in plenary. So these items will include, for example, strategic matters, including discussion of a new strategic framework for the convention, including also the work to improve the prior informed consent procedure. On the technical side, we of course always have many technical guidelines under development. These will be discussed and hopefully progressed during the meeting. Also discussion on plastic waste, what further activities could be recommended to COP, in addition to discussion of national reporting and other technical matters, and then legal matters, including work on the review of the annexes to the convention, work of the Implementation and Compliance Committee, and also discussion of partnerships. So that's the first day and a half. And then there will be work progressing in 3 contact groups. No more than 2 contact groups will run in parallel. These contact groups will be the strategic, technical, and legal contact groups, so 3 different groups. And it's anticipated then that we'd meet back in plenary session on the Friday, when oral reports will be given of remaining agenda items. The contact groups will report back, and then the outcomes will be agreed for the meeting. And this will really be in the form of draft decision, adoption of decisions. So expected outcomes. Well, as I mentioned, this is really the midpoint review and a time at which intersessional groups, which Juliet already highlighted, there are many of them, will be able to report to OEWG. OEWG will be able to consider and provide advice for moving forward. But really what we're looking at is having the work progressed for these strategic, technical and legal matters, so that we can prepare for the COP next year. So it's anticipated that after OEWG 14, of course, work will be continued intersessionally, and this will be aided by, for example, calls for information coming out of OEWG to provide more information for the intersessional groups to continue their work. Lastly, just to give some pointers on where to look in terms of preparations for the meeting. Well, we have the tentative schedule and scenario note for the meeting online. Also, all of the OEWG documents are posted at the address provided. Also, some interesting additional information on side events. We've got quite a wide range of different side events, ranging from textile to pharmaceutical waste, that will be throughout the week. A logistics note, and also information on steps we're taking to green the meeting. And also to mention that tomorrow, Wednesday, we will also have online briefings, online webinars for those who are outside Geneva. And with that, like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And now I change side. I will go to the other side, to Marianne. Please, Marianne.
Thank you very much to our hosts and to the government of Switzerland. It's nice to be here in the room with the other members of the Chemicals and Waste family here at UNEP. I'm Mary Ann Bailey from the Minamata Convention Secretariat. So I just want to go briefly through some a snapshot of our last COP. Oh, okay, thank you. For our last COP, which was COP5, and yeah, there we go. And just talk to you very briefly about how those themes and issues that were keyed up then are being carried through to our COP6, which will be in November of 2025. So I'm going to go back to this snapshot. Some of these are kind of fun pictures that show our extended secretariat team that worked very closely together on our COP5. And we also got a lot of work done with the 21 decisions adopted. And very good turnout from our parties. And I won't go through sorry, I'm clicking too much. I won't go through these decisions with you in detail. That would be far too much for this short presentation. But you can access them on our webpage in languages. But I do want to note that we've always had very strong stakeholder engagement in the Minamata Convention, including through the UNEP Global Mercury Partnership. And we keep striving for even more robust engagement of stakeholders, and in particular, Indigenous peoples, as well as local communities, more youth engagement, ensuring the full engagement of women in the implementation of work under the Minamata Convention. So the first decision that was reached at our last COP, COP5, was on Indigenous peoples and the effects of mercury pollution, recognizing that Indigenous peoples as well as local communities are particularly vulnerable to mercury exposure. And they're also among the first to face the serious health and environmental effects that result because of their close relationship with the environment and the resources. So they're also essential for the sound implementation and full implementation of the Minamata Convention and the SDGs. So really, they're key to the solution. So we were very pleased that this was a highlight of our COP5. And there will be an invitation from the Secretariat to provide for Indigenous peoples as well as local communities to provide views on their needs and priorities regarding the effects of mercury on their health, livelihoods, culture, and knowledge. A view to future work on identifying possible solutions. And then separately, there would also be further work on engagement of Indigenous peoples as well as local communities in the work on artisanal and small-scale gold mining and in the national action plans that select parties submit to us on ASGM. So those supplemental guidances will be available for consideration by COP6. And then another highlight from COP5, which will also be carried through in our intersessional work and into COP6 and beyond, is the connection between mercury and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And we've done quite a bit of work to show that these can be implemented in a mutually supportive manner to generate co-benefits and lift them both up in terms of implementation. So the decision taken by our COP encourages parties through their operational focal points of the Global Environment Facility to integrate mercury action into projects developed under the biodiversity focal area and throughout the GEF in the 8th replenishment of the GEF Trust Fund and into the 9th. And then also parties are invited to coordinate through their experts' input
to the CBD COP and other intersessional processes under the CBD to facilitate the consideration of additional indicators in the monitoring framework of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and especially under Target 7 on highly hazardous chemicals and mercury. Target 7 is on highly hazardous chemicals. So there's work to ensure that mercury is recognized in that picture. And then we're also going to be compiling views and experiences from parties and other stakeholders to prepare a roadmap on this mutually supportive implementation. And we're working closely within the chemicals and waste family of conventions to do that work. Now, moving on to a few other highlights that go into our intersessional work. COP5 agreed on amendments to our annexes A and B on mercury added products and industrial processes using mercury, and those amendments will enter into force on the 25th of April next year for those parties that have not opted out and do not need to opt in for those who have not done so. And these amendments are notable because they kind of they show the convention as really being a living convention that takes into account new information, new data, and new abilities of our parties to take on and expand their obligations. And so a number of product categories, which were already partially phased out, will be completely phased out. So it completes the phase out of all types of batteries, all switches and relays, fluorescent lamps, and this would be by 2025, in addition to those that phased out in 2020. And I won't go into a great deal of detail, but it was also notable in terms of mercury content in cosmetics, zero threshold, so that is no mercury intentionally added to cosmetics now. It had a 1 part per million threshold before. And then new measures on dental amalgam as well. And then new measures on 2 industrial processes, polyurethane in mercury-containing catalysts, or mercury-containing catalysts to be phased out by 2025 completely, and then some additional details in that Annex B picture. So, and in terms of meetings, our effectiveness evaluation group has been established by decision at COP5. So that group will meet later this month, actually on June 25th for its first meeting. That has 25 members from nominated by regions, representing all 5 regions. And our implementation and compliance committee will also be meeting. And then in terms of intersessional work, we have quite a heavy set of reports that we will be working on that you can see on this slide. I don't want to go into detail here in my short presentation, but you can see them here. So keying up a lot of work that will be taken up at both COP6 and COP7. And a lot of these will benefit from submissions from parties and other stakeholders. So you can see this, the set of submissions there on the right hand of the slide. And we, as I said, we do benefit from the strong membership in the Global Mercury Partnership. So we already have a strong base of experts that we hope will provide good information to these submissions. Now, just very briefly on implementation, we have launched our 4th round of applications to the specific international program, launched concurrently with the round of applications to the special program. So we're trying to steer potential applicants to the most appropriate fund for them to benefit from for eligible parties.
And this is thanks to the very generous donations of donors to our specific trust fund. So that's one part of our financial mechanism. The other part is the GEF. We have a very healthy allocation right now in GEF 8 for the Minamata Convention in the GEF. But since the GEF 8 period is already half over, we're trying to remind parties to please work with GEF agencies to develop really strong projects to fully use that allocation. And this is just a note that the UNEA 6 resolution on sound management of chemicals and waste does talk about the cooperation that we are to do with the related funds, which we're very happy to be already engaged in. And finally, some tools and training materials that we have available to support implementation by our parties and other stakeholders. We have generous funding support from the European Union, from Switzerland, and from Sweden for these items, some of which are in process, some of which have just launched. We've just launched the Minamata Tools platform on UNSSC. We have the training materials on mercury-added products and waste, and they will be soon available in all languages. And we have on the World Customs Organization platform training for customs and trade officials. So that will be coming soon. And then, of course, for quite a while now, you've had the Informia training platform that includes a mercury module, introductory module, as well as a mercury and gender module, and then the UNITAR Mercury Learn training platform. And we keep doing our Minamata online webinars, which we hope you tune into. So with that, thank you very much. I hope I haven't taken too much time.
No, you were perfectly on time, so thank you for that. Actually, I think this is one of the first times in these briefings we are ahead of time, so everybody has kept the slot very, very carefully. So thank you. And now I just realized that I haven't introduced any of you, because I assuming that everybody knows you very well. So I'm sorry for that. So I'm not going to introduce Ludovic Bernadette. So Ludo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a bit about what the Chemicals and Health branch is doing in the context of all what we've discussed so far and how we fit in with the conventions and the frameworks. So I have a few slides. I don't know. Yeah, great. Thank you. So to start with, in the support for the implementation of the multilateral environment agreement, and especially the chemicals agreement, we have been working with support from the Global Environment Facility with 74 countries to work with countries in the context of the Stockholm Convention to develop their national implementation plans and their subsequent updates. This is quite a bit of work because countries, each time new POPs are added, countries have to update their NIPs. But together with BRS, we've been working closely in developing a toolkit that is allowing us to digitalize this information and thereby well, making the information more broadly available for one, but also allowing the future update in a more easy manner. For the Minamata Convention, we have worked directly with 67 countries for Minamata initial assessments, and these are important projects because they are allowing countries to, or parties to the convention, rather, to identify their priorities in the implementation of the convention. And 32 countries for the development of their national action plan for the use of mercury in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. So quite a bit of good support there. Of note is we hosting in our branch the Global Mercury Partnership, which Marianne just talked about. And through this, we also involved in implementation of the Minamata Convention. We are working on the Planet Gold program, which is the major work that addresses the use of mercury in artisanal small-scale gold mining. We're working with WHO on the use of mercury in medical devices and skin lightening products. So again, to segue into what Marianne has mentioned, mercury is used in skin lightening products, and we're working with WHO and other partners addressing these issues, but also in the use of mercury in medical measuring devices, as well as dental amalgam. For the Stockholm Convention, of course, we are also implementing projects that are addressing chemicals by chemicals issues such as DDT and PCB, but also more recently going through a sectoral approach to the management of POPs in products and other chemicals, actually. And we are implementing a global project of the GEF integrated program on removing hazardous chemicals from the fashion and the construction value chain. We are also working on lead, and I will come back to that a bit later. But of note that with the Basel Convention Secretariat, working on the sound management of lead-acid battery waste in several countries. We are receiving support from the European Commission, Japan, and USCPA for that work. I wanted to also mention, because I'm the head of the Knowledge and Risk Unit, and we generate a lot of data that is used by the convention and the parties that are parties to these conventions. Of note is the Global Monitoring Plan projects, which were also supported by the Global Environment Facility. The current series of projects is actually ending, so it's a good time for us to take stock of what we have achieved. We have worked with 42 countries to generate information on 30 POPs. Of course, more POPs have been added since then, so we will have to work also on measuring these new POPs. Of note is that we're working with training laboratories in regions and ensuring quality through interlaboratory assessments. Of course, we've worked with WHO to collect 20 years of human milk data covering 80 countries globally. So a lot of information provided. Actually, the majority of the data in the data warehouse, the POPs data warehouse, coming from developing countries have been produced by this project. So quite important for the work of the effectiveness evaluation of the convention. We have designed a new series of projects that will be more focused on region, more focused on providing regional support to laboratories so that a lot of this work can be led from the regions in a sense of capacity building. And in this new project, we also include some aspects of mercury monitoring together with the Minamata Convention Secretariat. So this will start, it's been submitted for this work program at the GEF, and so we will start within the next year. So a lot of exciting work coming here. On UNEA resolutions, so I wanted to bring forward 2 resolutions from past UNEA. One from UNEA 3 on the work on lead paint management. We are hosting with WHO the Global Alliance to eliminate lead in paint. And this is a big success of this alliance with 94 countries that have passed legislation to regulate lead in paint. working also very much with the private sector in these projects. The target for this resolution was 100 countries, so we're very close to reaching this target. This is an important work because at the Davos meeting this year, US Aid has made some declaration on furthering the work on lead. And together with US EPA, the intention is to have a partnership, including countries, private sector, and actors of the lead work that will largely be based on what we've done and the successes of the Global Alliance to eliminate lead paint. So a lot interesting work coming forward on that. On resolution 5.7 from UNEA 5, here we have achieved a lot of what was asked of UNEP for this resolution. We have submitted before UNEA 6 report on the management of asbestos and its waste, for example. We have published also a summary of views from the stakeholders on the issues of concerns, and I will spend some time in the next slide on this. And of course, together with support from the European Commission, we are starting working closely with WHO and OECD in updating a report on endocrine disrupting compounds. On the work on the issues of concern, so the 19 issues of concerns that were identified in a combination of the work of the Global Chemical Outlook and SciChem. The summary of views is available online, but the broad lines are that working chemicals by chemicals or issue by issues will not achieve the results that we need to achieve in terms of chemicals and waste management in the limited time that we have. So it was suggested to work by group of or characteristic of issues. Some are mentioned on this slide. We have to work, for example, on pesticides, and there's a lot of stakeholders working on different aspects of pesticides. Some of them are picked up by the Global Framework on Chemicals, others not, and we'll need to address this issue. Chemicals in products, again, as I mentioned in the first slide, it's important to work on value chain life cycle analysis to make sure that the use of chemicals in products actually needed, and when it's needed, hazardous chemicals are not used, so that we ensure the recyclability of the product at the end of life. A lot of alignment here also with the Global Framework on Chemicals. Pharmaceuticals, the environmentally persistent pharmaceuticals are a big issue. It's closely linked to the antimicrobial resistance issue as well. So we're working on that with support from the European Commission as well. And then metals and metalloids has been picked up at UNEA 6. I will come back in the next slide. But it's important to note that the views of stakeholders, we need a holistic and coordinated approach if we are to manage these 19 issues correctly and in a timely manner. The most recent UNEA resolutions, UNEA for us had 2 resolutions that concern directly our work, in addition to others where we are involved in the life cycle and also in mining. But so I want to highlight resolution 6.9, which was put forward by the Swiss government and other countries. Here we need to work with, of course, IOMC organizations to continue the work that was started with the adoption of the Global Framework on Chemicals. And this takes shape in 2 line of work immediately, is the development of implementation programs, which IOMC is leading together with other stakeholders to ensure that the framework is implemented in a timely manner. and the targets are achieved. And the second one, which is also important, is to work on the measurability structure from the framework, because the targets need identified indicators and agreed indicators so that we can measure success and report on these targets, which have timelines of 2030 or 2035. In this resolution, we also work closely. Well, we also have some work to develop options to address lead, cadmium, arsenic, and organoting issues that were identified in the Issues of Concerns report. So we are planning to develop a report on these existing measures so that countries can take decisions on what next steps to take. And then we had a resolution supported by IPEN, Ethiopia, and the Africa Group on the highly hazardous pesticides, which is very much aligned with the resolution adopted in the Global Framework on Chemicals. And for that, we are working very closely with ILO, FAO, WHO to operationalize the Global Alliance on highly hazardous pesticides in the context of the framework again, and to initiate actions under this alliance. And finally, I wanted to bring the issue of antimicrobial resistance forward. It's the last point, so that's the one I would like you to take home. It's a very political issue this year. Sorry, as there will be high-level segment negotiations of text at the UN General Assembly this year in September. So we're working together with our New York office, of course, but the quadripartite organizations to make sure that the importance and urgent action needed to work on AMR is taken on board by the member states. It is an important milestone for us. It's the first time we have this type of declaration and work being done at the General Assembly since UNEP joined the tripartite group. So since a few years now, we have a quadripartite with WHO, FAO, and the World Organization for Animal Health. UNEP is fully involved with this work and all the work that is being done on AMR. This year, it's our chance to bring forward the environmental dimensions of AMR, because it is in the environment that a lot of these issues are being created, resulting from emissions from, of course, agriculture and pharmaceutical and uncontrolled releases of wastewater. But we need to really bring forward the environmental dimensions of this issue. And we are working closely with member states on making sure the declaration takes this into account. And thank you. I will stop here and give you the floor back, Jacqueline.
Thank you very much, Ludovic. And thank you for highlighting also different aspects of the work UNEP in general is doing in relation to this agenda. So I have, now we are coming to the questions and answers moment. And so far we have one question for the different secretariats that took the floor today. So I will read it aloud. It says, how are the different secretariats that took the floor today contributing to the ad hoc open-ended working group on the science policy panel to contribute further to the management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution? And this is also for the GFC Secretariat. So I don't know which one, who will like to start with this? Okay, please.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. And I just wanted to note that, of course, the negotiations for the Science Policy Panel began in the SciChem community, in a way, when we were starting to look at what the interface might look like. And then those negotiations were taken forward as at an intergovernmental level. So I think it is really important that our community look at the negotiations closely, see how they're developing, and also understanding how moving forward the global framework on chemicals can make sure that that independent body is supporting us in the implementation of our work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. On a very practical level, we are providing a staff person to help out with the meeting next week. But on the bigger science policy sort of interface level, certainly we have the POPs Review Committee, which is really looks at the science and then proposes a recommendations to the Conference of the Parties. So it's sort of a bit of a slice of the work. Also, the Rotterdam Convention has a chemicals review committee, which does similar work, and certainly there is a lot of scientific work under the Basel Convention. But I thought I'd ask Kay Ono from the Science and Technical Assistance Branch of BRS if she could supplement that.
Thank you for that question. Yes, so for example, 2023 BRS COPs welcome the cooperation already there under the agenda item on international cooperation. So this is one of key cooperation that the Secretariat is providing as requested, but also parties recognize its importance in participating in these meetings from BRS focal points and from the community of Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions, as Science Policy Panel could benefit the work of the conventions. And in terms of cooperation, indeed, for example, BRS has a long-standing scientific and technical committee, and we have been providing information and sharing experiences, for example, how we are treating confidential business information, or the procedure for conflict of interest being treated under the POPs Review Committee and other technical bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David and Kay. Marianne?
Thank you. I could just add very briefly for the Minamata Convention, we do also, like the other secretariats, we do follow the work of the SPP discussions closely, and we would participate as observers in the meetings, especially when they're in Geneva. It makes it quite a bit easier for a small secretariat. So we will be happy to have a presence in the upcoming meeting. But mainly what we do, similar to BRS, we provide input as requested or as appropriate on what our needs are with respect to what a science policy panel could do, but in very close relationship with our ongoing processes that bring to the forefront data, science, and information. So including work that has been keyed up, for example, for amending our annexes on mercury added products, work on the relationship between mercury and biodiversity, and in particular, our work on effectiveness evaluation. So we want to make sure that these processes going forward will be very complementary, and I have no doubt that they will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in relation to the Science Policy Panel, you might be aware that last week there was a briefing also organized by the GEN community. And we are encouraging all of you to have a look not only to that one, but to the whole series of the SPP discussions. Next week will be pivotal, as you heard before. The final negotiations on the foundational document will happen, and then we will go and jump in time until February next year, when the international meeting is intergovernmental meeting or international. Now I don't remember the intergovernmental meeting is happening, and that will be the moment where member states governments will finally adopt the conditions and the way to work. So please look at those series of webinars. I have another round of questions. These ones are two and go directly to the GFC Secretariat, to Kay. And one is if you can detail and explain when the first round of applications for the fund is expected to happen. And I'll ask you also the second one, so if that's okay. And this is, how do you think the GFC Secretariat will be able to support these upcoming chemicals and waste negotiations?
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. So in terms of the fund, this has been one of our priorities moving forward. So this week, tomorrow until Friday, we have an executive board meeting of the Global Framework on Chemicals Fund, at which we aim to finalize, if you like, the scope of the fund, the types of projects that we wish to be funding, and also some of the documentation that we'll need to be launching the first round of applications. With that in mind, we aim to have the first round open in October of this year, with the window being around 4 months, so closing in January, and then we hope to conclude and gain approval by the Executive Board of projects around March. So it's quite an ambitious timetable, but we really hope that we'll be able to progress that, and looking forward to getting some of the money out of the door and supporting the developing countries and others that need to have this this funding. On terms of how we work with the other MEAs, was that the question, Jacqueline? Yes. So it's absolutely critical that we work with the other MEAs, because they are integral and delivering towards many of our targets. And in fact, I've been talking to Juliette when we were mentioning some of the legal frameworks, and that does include those the pieces of legislation that are implementing Stockholm, for example, any POPs regulations that are happening national capacities. So it is really important that we work together. I understand that there is an internal task force that brings the secretariats together, and we'll be using that as the forum by which we'll be letting each other know in a little more detail how we can support each other, and also recognize the deliverables that we're contributing to each other's work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last question so far, I think it goes to Ludovic, to UNEP, and it's asking if UNEP or maybe the GFC Secretariat can identify who at IOMC and or UNEP is the main focal point for implementation programs, and how stakeholders can engage. And the second part of the question is who at FAO and UNEP is the main focal point for the establishment of the Global Alliance on HHPs. So you want, okay.
Thank you. So the work on the implementation program is the work of IOMC as a whole. So we do work under the chairman of the IOMC at the moment, who is the World Bank. But of course, all organizations have identified interest in leading or being part of the work on the various sectors we will work on. There will be a briefing early July to stakeholders organized by IOMC. So more information will be available then, but of course we'll call on all the interested stakeholders to work with the IOMC organizations in the various work streams. For the HHP Alliance, at the FAO is Mr. Gu Baogen, and for UNEP it would be me for the main point of contact.
Do you want to add, Kate?
So I didn't actually, I actually don't know who's the FAO, who was the FAO contact? Oh, right, lovely. Yes, no, I certainly know from my time working in the UK government that on the Global Alliance on HHPs, I do know that there are a number of non-governmental organisations that are very keen to progress that work. And I think it will be absolutely critical to get that off the ground. I think that will be a really good way to make sure we're getting some delivery and action in that space. So looking forward to engage with that, but haven't to date looked at that aspect of the work. The implementation programs, yes, very, I think to be aware, you know, we in the global framework here are the Secretariat, and then UNEP is acting as its own interested party as part of the IOMC. So there is a split in our responsibilities here. For me, it will be incredibly important when we implement these programs that we do have all stakeholders engaged and around the table in making sure that there's a degree of governance over those programs, and we certainly are engaged with the project and making sure that we can have good structures in place that we know and understand what is happening across what is potentially quite a complicated program to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe to add from the UNEP side, as Ludovic was explaining this March, our member states adopted 2 resolutions, the one on chemicals in general, and they requested particularly the executive director to put an eye on the implementation of the framework, not only providing the secretariat, but also working towards the different objectives and targets of the framework. Also, there is a specific request on the HHPs, on the highly hazardous pesticides, for UNEP to be involved. But in this case, because of the ICCM resolution, the FAO is taking the lead, but that doesn't mean that we are not working together also, or we will be working together with the BRS Secretariat. There is a huge amount of chemicals listed under those annexes that the conventions, the BRS conventions have, which are HHPs and needs to be addressed in a correct manner. Mercury, luckily, is no longer possible to be used as a pesticide, so that's nice and good. So with this, I don't see any other questions coming in, and I don't see any questions also, or neither from here, from the floor. So we are coming to an end of the briefing, and as you all know, the BRS Secretariat, Minamata, and the Chemicals branch, together with the GFC Secretariat, we're available for any questions and follow-up that you will be needing to receive. And a big thank you to Diana and her team for always being here, supporting and putting that smile. When you look at them, they are always like smiling and saying, yes, go ahead, go ahead. So very much appreciated. Thank you very much to all, and for you that have been listening to us, more than 100 people, so that's commendable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Let me just make an announcement. Tomorrow we will be online at 2 p.m. to discuss, we have an event that we are co-organizing with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights, in the lead up indeed to the ad hoc open-ended working group on the science policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution. Sorry, I hate acronyms, so that's why I keep sending the names per extent. That is meeting next week here in Geneva. And so tomorrow afternoon, we are discussing issues related to conflict of interest with a series of stakeholders. At 2 p.m., the event is happening online. The link is shared on the screen and on the chat for who is online with us. And then we have a series of events coming up. We will be at the Open and Working Group of the Basel Convention, organizing a side event and supporting many others, discussing plastics and other issues. So we look forward to have you, if not in person, online at all these upcoming events. Thank you. Thank you.